Hey guys, what's going on? Hope everybody's having a good day, and well, actually good morning. It's pretty early in the morning right now. I wanted to get the video done before the dump truck started rolling around and before Elijah got out of bed, so gonna do that. And today's topic is one that it's a question that I've been getting a lot over the past year from the people I've taken out on my on the water lessons. A lot of the guys, you know, really wanting to learn more about fishing, and I've had them ask over and over again, how do you know how long to spend in an area before leaving? So I'm gonna have a little discussion on that. I think you guys will find it interesting. Real quick, before we get started, just want to remind everybody to go to fishingamoment.com, man. Check out our new lake map breakdowns. We're getting into the fall season. We've got them for all 4 seasons, lakes all over the country, building personal maps. You can check all that on fishingamoment.com. So, okay, let's get into the subject a little bit here about how long to spend in an area. You know, one of the things I think before I get into this question that I want to reiterate to everybody out there is in bass fishing, there's no absolutes. There's one of the most frustrating things for a lot of anglers starting out, or even if you've been in it a while, is you try to want to put the sport of bass fishing into some type of a category that you can control, where you read a book and this is what the fish do, and they do this under this situations. That's just not how it is. There's some guidelines and there's some foundations that you can go by in fishing, but for the most part, oh, here comes the first dump truck. Already didn't take them long. It's not even 7 o'clock yet. So there's some guidelines that you can go by, but overall, it's usually always something different every single day that you're out there. So the first thing that you have to realize when you're trying to decide how long to spend in an area, you have to be able to read the potential of that water. And what I mean by that is every single area that you pull into has some degree of potential to it, as far as its ability to hold not only numbers of fish, but quality fish, the size of fish. And a lot of times the potential of that area is determined by a combination of a lot of different factors. It can be how much covers an area, it can be the type of cover, it can be the water clarity, it can be the time of year, it can be the water level, it can be how much fishing pressure that area is getting, it can be how large the area is. There's a lot of different variables that go into that specific thing. So what you're looking for when you're deciding how much time to spend in an area is you're looking to grade that area's potential for doing well in there. Say for example, if you go into a creek arm on your favorite lake, you know, just one of the larger creek arms, and you roll in there and there's not a lot of cover, maybe there's a dock once in a while, or there's a lay down here and there, and there's no grass anywhere, and there's some gravelly, rocky banks, and you get in there and you see a lot of people fishing, that type of thing. An area like that, in my opinion, would have a fairly low potential because you don't have a lot of different type of cover that will hold big groups of fish. And then even if you do have some fish using that area, if you've got a lot of boats in there, it's going to neutralize how good that area is. On the other hand, if you get into a different creek on the lake and you notice there's quite a bit of cover, maybe there's a lot of boat docks, or maybe there's some bank grass everywhere, or maybe there's a lot of flooded bushes, or maybe there's a lot of lay down trees everywhere, and you see bait fish flicking quite a bit, and you notice that there's not that many guys in there fishing. There's maybe a couple dudes in there tied up crappie fishing somewhere. All of those indicators right there, the bait fish flickering, the abundance of cover, the lack of fishing pressure, that leads me to think this area's got some pretty good potential to do well if I can figure out how to get those fish to bite. So that's the first thing you have to do, is you have to determine the potential of an area. The second thing that you have to do is you have to actually fish that area. And just like, you actually have to begin fishing that area and see how many bites you can get. This is sort of how I start out when I'm trying to gauge the potential of an area. If I pull into a creek and I survey the creek, say I scout the whole creek out, and I pull up on what I think is the key looking structures, and I call these key structures indicator areas. And let's say, for example, there's say you're fishing a lake that's got, we'll go back to boat docks again, and say there's a real nice looking stretch of docks. There's maybe 4 or 5 docks in a row there, and maybe they're set up on a little main or secondary point, and they just look really good, and they've got brush around them, and they've got the right depth, all that type of stuff. If I fish 2 or 3 of those little sections of those, what I call indicator docks or indicator type covers, the best looking cover in there, and don't get a bite, don't get any action whatsoever, that's going to tell me not to spend much time in that area. But if I go to those indicator areas, and again, it can be a line of hydrilla that's matted on the surface, it can be some flooded willow trees, whatever, it could be just a real, you know, good section of rocky looking bank, or like a series of rocky points. If I go in those really good indicator areas and I start getting bit, maybe I'm getting a bite off of every 4th dock, or maybe off of every little 3rd subtle point I'm catching one, or maybe every 25 or 30 yards down a row of bushes I'm getting a bite. If I roll into those areas that look good and I start getting bites, that slows me down, and that tells me that I need to spend more time in that area. And what I'll do is, instead of fishing the really, really key, awesome looking places, I'll start fishing the same creek, but I'll start fishing those areas that don't look quite as good. Some of the areas that are not quite as obvious to the visual eye. I may get out there and I may graph around a little bit off the bank. I may pay attention if I can see any like wood barely under the surface. I may look for rock transitions. I'll start breaking that area down into a little bit more of a subtle aspect. So that's the 2 things, guys, right there. If I'm going to give you guys 2 things right off the bat, it's going to be learn to gauge the potential of the area, and find out if you can get bit on the best looking cover. And if you do that, and you start getting bites, and you start, you know, having a lot of different options to fish in that creek, the 3rd thing and the last thing I try to do is you gauge the size of the fish. If you're getting bit by nothing but, you know, 10 and 12 inch fish, and you've changed up different techniques, then it may be time to move out of there, maybe not spend a lot of time in there. But if you're occasionally getting bit by like a quality bass, like a 2.5 pound plus fish, along with smaller ones, a lot of times in that situation, that'll keep me in there a little bit longer. Another thing, before you leave an area and before you give it up, if you're getting some bites, even by small fish, adjust your techniques. If you're catching them on a small crankbait, or, you know, something like that, upsize your crankbait, go to a different lure category. Try something that you think is going to generate a bigger bite before you leave it. Don't just assume that there's nothing but small fish in there unless you've changed up your approach a little bit too. And the last thing, real quick, I'll reiterate is approach an area from different angles. If you make a pass down a really good looking bank in a creek, and say you catch 2 or 3 fish, you know, don't leave it. Don't leave that area yet. Come right back around from a different angle, come down the same bank. And a lot of times, guys, if you approach an area from just a completely different angle, you're going to catch additional fish that you would not have caught from coming down one angle, simply because the way those fish are positioned. So anyway, guys, that's just what I look for in there as far as how to gauge how long to stay in an area. Again, it's a real abstract question to ask, but those are usually the foundations that I found to be pretty successful. And if I had to give you 2 good pieces of advice to remember on that, is the area that you're fishing has to have enough cover to support a big population of fish, and you have to have an area that's not getting completely hammered. Those to me are the 2 most critical factors. If I've got an area that looks really good and is getting completely hammered, that neutralizes that area. That area can be good, but the boat pressure and the fishing pressure will take that, it will reduce a good area down to a mediocre area. But if you have an area that's mediocre, that doesn't have much fishing pressure, then that area can be actually better some other places. So that's my guidelines. It's worked for me pretty good over the years. And I think it'll take some of the intimidation factor out for you guys if you try that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the tip. Much appreciated. Please hit that subscribe button if you guys haven't had a chance to yet. It'd be much appreciated. We'll be back tomorrow with another one. See you.